everyone, and welcome to thorough newspaper analysis presented to you by LawSikho. Let's see what articles are important from the Indian Express and the Hindu today. First, the article is Rule of Mob, which talks about the increasing cases of mob lynching in India and in how these can be curtailed down and what are the important legal provisions that are already available that can deal with this problem of mob lynching. Secondly, UK to suspend extradition treaty with Hong Kong. As we have already got to know that China has recently passed the national security law to curtail the use of internet in Hong Kong, and this has actually impacted various other countries that were dealing in Hong Kong, and UK also has had a history with Hong Kong. We'll see that in detail and what actually do we mean by extradition. Third, State and Temple, which talks about the very recent judgment given by the Honorable Supreme Court about the Shree Padmanaswamy Temple in Kerala, and how the Shiveship rights given to the Royal Travancore family has created a kind of, to say, spur in various other temple authorities and people related to that. And fourth, reforms that miss the point. Now here, we're talking about the recent APMC liberalization reforms that have been taken by the government of India to liberalize the farming sector in India. And actually, basically, we'll be discussing in more detail that how a state intervention is important in a way to regulate equal rights and better opportunities for the farmers. And finally, we'll be discussing the news in flash section, which talks about the crisp news, which is important from the prelims exam point of view. Here is the judiciary, where are the various judiciary courses that are available, the judiciary courses that are available at LawSikho. And here, this is the page, and you can also go right now and download for yourself free study material, which is very amazingly drafted for your exam. And this can be availed by anyone. And we have this test prep course for judiciary, which is really nice, and one should always go and check it out on our official website. And there are also other courses that are of prime importance for any student. Now let's see that what is the MCQ for the day. Kurma recently seen in news is a first new app or application for saving turtles and tortoises in India. Second, new national level agency to look after the maritime security of India. Third, a gift initiative started by Manipur NGO for COVID-19 patients. Or fourth, a new Navy submarine made indigenously by DRDO. This is the descriptive question for the day. That there are sufficient and efficient criminal laws in India that cover mob lynching as a crime. In the light of above statement, discuss in detail how can mob lynching be curtailed down using the already available criminal laws. We will be discussing this in detail, and we hope that you will be able to write the answer to this question. Now let's jump quickly towards the first article for the day. Recently, 3 people who were alleged to be cattle thieves and suspected to be Bangladeshi nationals were lynched in Assam's Karimganj district on July 18. Such killing shows lack of faith in rule of law and leading to general lawlessness. Let's first understand what do we basically mean by lynching, and it simply means it is an act or series of acts of violence, whether spontaneous or planned, committed to inflict extrajudicial punishment. Now this is something that makes the entire difference between any other act and a lynching act, that it is extrajudicial in nature and it tries to give an extrajudicial punishment as an act of protest, which is caused by a desire of a mob, to say, and not the desire of the law or to say the judiciary, but of a mob that is causing this lynching, to enforce upon a person or a group of persons any perceived legal, societal and cultural norms or prejudices. Now here are some of the legal provisions that govern the idea of lynching, or that actually basically what is happening is that under the Indian criminal law system, we do not have a provision or a law that hits directly or talks directly about the crime of mob lynching. But yes, of course, we have some other provisions that all in all encompass this crime of mob lynching, and definitely are quite enough for the time being to enforce or to bring into its ambit the mob lynching. Firstly, let's see at section 300 of IPC, which talks about murder, which says that except in cases hereinafter accepted, culpable homicide is murder if the act by which the death is caused is done with the intention of causing death. And but obvious, when the people in mobs or groups of 100 or even more are attacking a particular individual, they definitely know the gravity of their act, and they know that this act can cause definitely the death of that person, and thus it can be said that mob lynching is also a kind of murder. Then the punishment for murder is given under section 302 of the IPC. Also, Section 34 of the Indian Penal Code talks about common intention, which says that if a group of people they do something in pursuance of a common intention, then that would be considered as an act done collaboratively, and also then they can also be joined. They can also be tried jointly. Then we have Section 120B, which is 120B of the IPC, which talks about criminal conspiracy, that any act done with an intent of doing something criminal will come under criminal conspiracy and is also punishable. Then we have a Section 307 of the Indian Penal Code, which talks about attempt to murder, because in some cases, if there is a chance that the victim survives and death does not occur, but yet it will be considered as an attempt to murder under Section 307. Then we also have Section 223 Clause A of CRPC, which says that the police has the power where it can, if it sees that there is any kind of unlawful assembly, then the police will have the power to disperse the people, and thus we can see that various other sections also of the IPC and CRPC are quite relevant for dealing in the problem of mob lynching, unless we have a specific law to deal with it. Let's just see that what are the relevant statistics. So according to the NCRB 2007 data, Assam, with 143 registered crimes per lakh population, had one of the highest crime rates in India, and also various other states in India like the Maharashtra, Haryana, Rajasthan, Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, etc. have seen various cases of mob lynching lately. Victims are invariably from the vulnerable groups. Now, one pattern that has been very regularly noticed here is that the people who fall victim of this crime of mob lynching or mob violence are in some or the other way the belongers of the vulnerable groups of India or of our country. Now, these could be, for example, to say the Dalits for that matter, or other religious minorities like Muslims or other minorities. Now, in this case also, as we can see, they were considered to be as Bangladeshi nationals, and they're already interpreted and already viewed as intruders in the northeastern states, and they, for that matter, and the people from poorer sections of society are more to say vulnerable in this to this crime. Then what are the effects of lynching incidents are very important to be understood. Firstly, it derails the governance, because obviously it is very important to have smooth governance in the country, and thus it is important that people have faith in the legal system and also the judiciary of that country. But this actually shows complete failure of governance and the lack of confidence that people have in the government. Next, it is a sign of failure of law enforcement, because obviously if people would have had enough faith, because see, the fact here is that not only the law is to be blamed on one side, obviously it is the barbaric nature or barbaric thought process of this mob also. But yes, if the law and order in a country is made more viable and it is made faster as compared to what it is right now, it would definitely make people believe more in the enforcement of law, and thus this failure would not be the case. And thirdly, it defames the country all in all on the global level as well. Because on one side, we enjoy and celebrate being the largest democracy of the world, and we strive to give all kinds of human rights to every citizen of our country. And on the other side, we are not able to protect the people, and especially the vulnerable groups of our society, from this barbaric crime of mob lynching, which is definitely a big blot on the country. And thus, this situation should be analyzed very critically, and as soon as possible, these specific laws for mob lynching should be brought. But yet, we have in hand various criminal laws that are quite adequate for bringing into their ambit the mob lynching. Next, UK suspends extradition treaty with Hong Kong. In this article, the most important part for us is to understand the concept of extradition and what actually do we mean by extradition. So firstly, let's see that what is extradition. Simply, the Honorable Supreme Court of India defines extradition that it is a delivery on the part of one state to another of those whom it is desired to deal with for crimes or for which they have been accused or convicted and are justifiable in the courts of the other state. Basically, what happens is, like for example, country A has an extradition treaty signed with country B, and now if there is a criminal who has ran away or who has been a fugitive from country A and has gone to country B. Now, because they already have an extradition treaty signed between them, country A can demand and can request the another country to send back this particular criminal to country A, so that the particular trial can be continued or can be initiated against that criminal. Now, this actually helps to put down the crime on criminal or on the international level, because many times the criminals would like to flee away to other countries, so to escape the judicial process in their own country. But if extradition treaty is signed between the countries, then that person cannot really escape, and so he will be punished. The very famous case of extradition we have also seen in the Vijay Mallya case, when India has been demanding the extradition of Vijay Mallya, and because India has had a treaty of extradition, and thus it would be possible to bring him back to the country. But yes, if in case he is in a country which India does not have an extradition treaty with, it would definitely not be possible for India to bring him back, at least through this means. And thus, in this case, recently the Chinese government had passed the national security law in order to curtail and put down the use of internet in Hong Kong. And due to this, there is a chance that now more criminality, or to say more suppression of people might occur, due to which the rates of crime or the rates of people fleeing away from Hong Kong would be a more common thing. And thus, in keeping that fear in mind, the Britain has already brought down, or it has already suspended this extradition treaty from there. Earlier, Australia and Canada had also taken the same step. Now let's move towards the other article, which talks about state and temple. And in the very recent judgment, and one of the most leading judgment of Supreme Court, in the case of Shree Marthand Verma versus State of Kerala, a 2-judge bench overturned a Kerala High Court. So what was the earlier finding of the Kerala High Court was that the Travancore royal family had no role in controlling or managing the Shree Padmanaswamy Temple. Now, here, the very famous Shree Padmanaswamy Temple has been given the rights of shibetship. Basically, rights of shibetship are the rights wherein the people, any particular person or a family is given the right to manage the various affairs or the deity or the temple for that matter. Now, let's understand that what led to this dispute and why, all in all, this case went to the courts in the first place. So in 1949, the princely state of Travancore signed a covenant with Union of India that rulers of Travancore, who at that time was the Balaram Verma, and his legitimate successors could control the management of temple. So keeping in mind the time of 1949, they were given this right that the rulers of Travancore who would be given this right to manage the affairs of this temple. But then, in 1971, when we had the 26th Amendment to the Constitution, it abolished all the rights of all the royal titles. As we know that under Article 18 of the Indian Constitution, all the royal titles and other kinds of titles have been abolished, keeping in mind to bring more of equality in the society. So after this, but obviously when the title was abolished, so the dispute arose that if there is no royal family at all, then how can this particular so-called royal family control the temple? And thus from here the dispute arose. So the Supreme Court held in this case that the 26th Amendment, or all in all to say Article 18 of the Indian Constitution, it does not impugn the rights of the royal family. So all it has brought down is the title of the royal family and not the rights that they hold. Now let's see that what is the broader issue, because in states like Uttarakhand, the state is seeking control over many temples. Basically what happens is that temples are often used as a mechanism of exclusion and through religious hierarchy and norms. And to avoid that, the states make sure that most of the temples are governed by the state itself. And in such a situation where the role or the shibetship rights have been given to a family for that matter in Shree Padmanaswamy Temple have actually been quite controversial for that matter. But then again, Justice Patanjali Shastri says, keeping in mind or commenting upon the Hindu Religious and Charitable Endowments Act, that if we try too much of rigidity or rigid departmental control over the religious institutions and management, so this was against the secular nature of the Indian Constitution, and thus in a way we can say that this decision given by the Supreme Court is quite much in the spirit of the Indian Constitution. Now let's discuss the last article for the day, which talks about COVID-19 and agriculture. So it says that after 1991, which was the LPG reforms, the liberalization, privatization and the globalization reforms, farming in India has become economically unviable, because it is said that there has been an unprecedented neglect in the agriculture has resulted in the unprecedented gap between the standard of living in rural and urban areas. In response, the government has decided to liberalize India's agriculture by amending the APMC Act and the Essential Commodities Act, which we have already discussed in detail in our previous sessions. Now, here it says that the argument from the government side for liberalizing the APMC is that APMC or the very rigid provisions under the APMC that do not allow free market to function because of the harsh government intervention. But the author says that according to the high-level committee, which was headed by Shanta Kumar in 2015, only 6% of the farmers in India get the minimum selling price benefit or the MSP benefit, as only 22 crops or 22 kinds of crops in India are procured or are benefited under the MSP. and other 94% of the farmers just have to bear the burden of the market forces. And historically, APMC has worked as a solution and not as a problem. And thus, in this situation also, it would work as a situation, and there is no such dire need to liberalize the entire market, and that too at such a big scale. And also, the author says that the APMC has helped to contain the urban and rural divide and build up food stocks. Also, the APMC has already been modified in 17 states. Now, as we know that agriculture is a state subject, and thus, if there is any need felt by the states, as in this example, we can see that 17 states in India have already made required modifications to the APMC, and thus it shows the very flexible nature of APMC, and thus it was not really desired that such a great level or high level liberalization is made over there, because the author believes, and also it is a point to be thought upon, that this liberalization might put the farmers who are actually quite poor and are not even well equipped with various resources, they might put them more at the verge or at the stake of being exploited by various kinds of market forces, the contractors or other market agencies. And thus, instead of doing the better that was actually sought by the APMC liberalization, what would happen would be more and more exploitation of the farmers at the hand of various market forces. Then let's see that what actually could be the reforms that can be taken place, that can be done instead of this, or at least now in addition to this, is that the agriculture sector is heavily subsidized in favor of the big players. Like, only 3 crops in India receive more than 60% of the non-product specific support, and various other crops, they fall off from the list. And these 3 crops are rice, wheat and sugarcane. Now, due to this, because heavy subsidies and support prices are provided on only these 3 crops, farmers tend to repeat this cropping pattern, and they again and again are trying to commercialize the cropping system and are only sowing rice, wheat and sugarcane at a larger scale. This is causing 2 types of problems in our system. First is the economic issue, and the other is the ecological issue. Because it is becoming economically more and more commercial, agriculture is becoming way too commercial. Due to that, the farmers are using more of the resources that are not even very cheap, for that matter, for getting higher output. This is actually not giving the desired result to the farmers, and thus they are being economically strived. On the other hand, due to a repetitive sowing of a particular kind of plant on the soil is tending to become more and more nutrient deficit, which is causing the ecological imbalance in India. And thus, state intervention should be done for, first, better pricing, investments in water harvesting, and better and more efficient ways of providing water to the farmers, and an agroecological transition is needed. Then we should make India's agriculture sustainable, and thus we should take inspiration from the Andhra Pradesh model, which has done it in a very good and sustainable manner. And also it has strived, and even many northeastern states have strived on using more and more organic manure instead of fertilizers, and that should be taken as an inspiration for the entire nation. And lastly, we should follow the various recommendations which are given by the MS Swaminathan committee report, and this would definitely help in bridging this urban-rural divide, which actually was the aim of bridging to be bridged by the APMC liberalization. Now with this, let's discuss the news and flash section. So the first one is Oxford vaccine gets immune response. Just yesterday we talked about the vaccine which was developed by AstraZeneca. So now it has gotten its name, and the name is CHADOX2 nCoV-19, which is the nCoV-19 or novel coronavirus 19 vaccine. And this is the name of the vaccine. So this is a very potential question from the prelims point of view, that wherein this name could be given and it could be asked that what is actually this, and thus we should know that this is a vaccine which is developed for the treatment, which is being developed for the treatment of COVID-19 by AstraZeneca, by Oxford, and it is very efficient due to the presence of killer T cells, in addition to the antibodies, which have a tendency of staying for a longer time in the body and giving better effects. Then the Kurma app. On the World Turtle Day, which is on 23rd May 2020, a mobile app called Kurma was launched for turtle conservation by the Government of India. It has been developed by the Indian Turtle Organization Action Network, which is also known as the ITCAN, in collaboration with the Turtle Survival Alliance. And please mind this language, it is meant to be Kurma. And it is actually, it aims at preserving the various kinds of turtles and tortoises which are available in India. And as per a report in 2019 by Traffic, at least 11,000 tortoise or freshwater turtles fall prey to illicit poaching and smuggling every year, and thus it is very essential step taken in this regard to conserve the status of turtles and tortoise. And thirdly, Solar Orbiter is simply, it is a space mission which aims at orbiting around the sun, as the name itself is suggesting. It has been developed by a collaboration of the European Space Agency and NASA. This is from the Europe and this is from USA, as we all know. And then it completed its first close pass of the sun, and it has sent its very first pictures of the sun till date. And let's just give a small revision to today's MCQ, which now we are sure that you'll be able to answer. Kurma recently seen in news is a first new app for saving turtles and tortoises in India, new national level agency to look after the maritime security of India, a gift agency started by gift initiative started by Manipur NGO for COVID-19 patients, or a new Navy submarine made indigenously by DRDO. We hope that it was a good session for you. Do check out the website of LawSikho and various test prep courses, keeping in mind the judiciary test prep course, which is really beneficial for you all. We hope it was a good session for you. Thank you.